Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli, and we should have Peter on any moment, and indeed, he should be on right now. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hey, George. Good evening.
Good evening. And we are recording. So how's Moscow today, Peter?
Cold. Very cold.
Well, it's not as bad as New York City. New York City's been hit with a massive snowstorm. It's a real hammering. Something like 2 feet or something. I don't know if you have any gagglers who are in New York. You can let us know how bad it was, but it made the front pages of the Daily Mail. So it was a big snowstorm.
Well, big snowstorm, it barely makes the news here. We're used
to
it.
That's right. But it's kind of exciting in New York because it's relatively rare in New York. So it gets very exciting because, hey, life is different. Something unusual is going on.
Well, apparently, you get half an inch of snow in London, and the whole city is paralyzed.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. But you have that in Washington D.C. But I think that's just simply an excuse for people not to go to work. So, a little bit of a snowstorm and then boom, federal government shuts down, schools shut down. That's it. Everyone stays home.
Well, according to some people, Russia won't attack Ukraine until the soil gets hard. It's been hard for months. And then an invasion in spring when it's all melting. No, it's called mud. No, I mean, these people have no idea what they're talking about.
None whatsoever. But I have to say, though, Peter, is that during the past 24 hours since we did our last podcast, I'm become very, very pessimistic. I mean, I have a real sense of foreboding about what's going on because this whole campaign against Zelensky suggests to me that the Americans, of course, the British were their lapdogs. The Americans plan to get rid of him. Maybe stage a coup and then blame it on Russia, because after all, the British Foreign Office came up with this nonsense a few days ago about the coup. The Russians are planning a coup, but in fact, it could be the Americans are planning a coup, and then they shove in somebody. It doesn't look to me like Zelensky is in charge of his own military and security apparatus. He's fallen out with the Americans. He's not going along with the whole, invasion. The Americans, I mean, there'll now be so many media stories about how Washington is sick of him and everything. So I think it could be toppled. The coup will be then hailed. Okay, they'll probably say something like Zelensky was planning with Putin to set out the country. The military and security apparatus, they found out about this and thwarted it. And the Americans will say, yeah, poof, that's great. And then I think there'll be some kind of an incident, a provocative incident, which could get very nasty. I mean, the Russians don't want to walk into a trap, but I think that there could be some sort of a provocative incident.
Well, George, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. One has to wonder if Zelensky is going to survive it.
Oh, I don't think so. I think he may be gone within the next few days.
But you mean gone?
Could be. Yeah. Oh, you mean physically survive? That's another thing. I mean, I think he's going to have to follow the path of Yanukovych, head for Russia, because that's the only place where he's going to be safe. because if there's a coup, these people mean business. I mean, they're not, they don't hold prisoners literally. They're not taking prisoners. So
well, I mean, the U.S. and its European allies, some of them have experiences with coups in Ukraine. So dust off the old playbook, bring out 2014 again.
Yep.
I don't think the Russians are going to walk into this trap. They already can see this happening, and I think they're going to be very, very careful, because it's NATO that's losing its mind. It's the Americans that are terrified that people will lose the narrative. This is really scary times. I mean, there's one erratic side and there's one watching with foreboding.
That's right. But Lavrov, in that interview yesterday, twice he said one has to wonder why the Americans and the British and the Australians and the Canadians pulled out the spouses of their, partial evacuation of their embassies. No one else did. Do they know something we don't? So we're watching this very closely. He said this twice. He doesn't say these things pointlessly just to make a little light joke. Do they know something we don't? So we're watching this very closely. So clearly, I think the Russians are on high alert that there may be something. And these statements that are coming out, now the number of Russians on the border is up to 175,000. So that's been an amazing how it's increased, 175,000. Watch how that's going to rise to more than 200,000. By Monday, it'll be 250,000.
But even using the word border as a misnomer here, 175 kilometers away from the border.
Right.
Okay, and even elements of the Ukrainian military say that these are not, I don't know the military language, I don't know the jargon, but these are not like battle groups. They're not assembling in a way that suggests any kind of attack.
Right. No, that's exactly right. But I think that Lloyd Austin, so he says Putin must stand down. And then we got that bloody idiot Boris Johnson, who's making a trip to Ukraine next week, and then he says he's going to be talking on the phone with Putin. He's saying, Putin has to again stand down. He's got to, de-escalate. You're going around. You're sending arms. You're coming up with this hysterical bluster, and Putin's the one who has to de-escalate. I mean, it's just, and this goes on now all the time among these, among particularly the US and the UK. Russia must de-escalate. Who the hell is escalating? The only ones escalating. Look, not one word, but from Putin, from Shoigu, from Lavrov, suggests that they're about to invade, that they're issuing any kind of ultimatums to Ukraine. They haven't issued an ultimatum to NATO. There's no indication whatsoever. It's all been artificially created that Russia is about to invade. Yeah. And then they say, well, Putin must stand down.
Stand down in his own country.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
No, we've already touched on it, but what's going on with Zelensky, this is what's really very at the center, because apparently, it seems that, and of course this is nicely leaked to the minions and the press to repeat the script, is that he's not the right man for the right job. Okay, right. I mean, Zelensky. If we look at this scenario, he's the only one that realizes just how bad it can get for his country, because he realizes that he's not going to get any help. He's not. Yeah. Okay? So he's being forced to be the lead guy in the destruction of his own country.
Yes, exactly. He suddenly realized what we've been saying for years: America has no interest in you. For them, you are a battering ram. They're just going to use you as part of their revived Cold War against Russia. That's your usefulness. You lose half your country. You think Washington gives a damn? And I think he seems to have realized it a little bit too late. But it also indicates, given all these stories that are now being leaked, the New York Times, Politico, and then your friend Julia Ioffe, they're all saying the same thing. Zelensky has lost the confidence of Washington. Washington no longer believes in him.
Washington elected him, or the Ukrainian people? I always get this.
Washington elected him.
Oh, that's right. Okay, right. Just wanted to clear that up. Okay.
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
what we also
Yep.
what we've also learned is that the Ukrainians are not preparing for war. Okay, they're not.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And now that's why he's under attack. And I think it's no coincidence, as they say, that Poroshenko has suddenly made a comeback. You know, we talked yesterday in the podcast about this interview, this long interview with the Times of London. So Poroshenko is now back. They obviously decide, hey, Poroshenko is you know, a more reliable figure than Zelensky. So, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I can't confirm this, but when Poroshenko returned to Ukraine, he went to the prosecutor's office, obviously surrendered himself.
Okay.
From what I understand, and again, I cannot confirm this, but it was the Western embassies that made it clear he would not be under house arrest. Okay.
Right. So, that's what I read that as well. That
okay,
was,
so
particularly the United States. Yeah.
Who is calling the shots? Okay.
Right.
Again, Joe Biden goes and has the a prosecutor fired, and now some American functionary is telling the Ukrainians who they can detain and who they can't detain in their own country.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, that's right. And so here, I mean, he comes back. I'm sure that he came back with the understanding that the Americans would protect him. He wouldn't have just come back just like that. You know, he knows what these Ukrainians are like. So he came back, obviously in the full confidence that nothing much is going to happen to him. So that was, so I think he was the Americans who I think, you know, made sure that he would come back. And he's now there as an alternative leader. And then you might think, oh, well, but hey, he lost the last election. You can't install him. Well, same thing happened with Yanukovych. And Yanukovych was gone. And who's in charge now? Yats and Turchinov, the people that he had beaten in the 2010 election. It doesn't matter that, you know, suddenly the people who lost the election are running the show. Americans don't care. They'll just say, hey, this is democracy in action. Yeah.
And the hope that Zelensky had portended is all gone here, because Poroshenko, he launched that anti-terrorist operation, as they call it, against the Donbass, and was obliterated. Okay,
right.
But the spin here, what we need to understand is that Poroshenko will do what he's told.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right. And you know, and Zelensky obviously, you know, for a while did as he was told. I mean, he pursued all of his these anti-Russian policies, his nationalistic policies, but it didn't do him much good. Clearly, this is why I think there's something sinister going on, because obviously there's some sort of a plot being hatched in Washington. London's going along with it to stage something, and Zelensky suddenly he's getting cold feet and says, "No, I'm not going along with this." He's saying, "You know, I'm not going to talk up this Russian presence. There's no Russian threat, no greater Russian threat than has been in the past 12 months." So he's, you know, that's very much, you know, so when the CNN said this conversation went badly, you know, they went badly because he just wasn't going to play along with the American line. He said, no, there isn't the great crisis. You know, there's no imminent invasion. And now the knives are out for him. Hey, you're undercutting us.
It's not that there was a bad conversation between the United States and Ukraine. It was Zelensky had a bad conversation with Joe Biden.
Right.
That's what was wrong with this.
Yep.
And having the Ukrainians make that known publicly, that probably was the last nail in the coffin there.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think so. So that's why when they go and leak it to people like Julia Yoffe, we are really tired of Zelensky. You know, we've had it up to here with him. Yeah, that's it. You know, hey, you don't go along. First of all, you don't go along with our schemes, and then you tell the world. And he said it. He even said this at his news conference yesterday. So he confirmed at his news conference everything that was said by that anonymous source about how that telephone conversation went. So in other words, what the White House lied. The White House lied, said, oh, no, that's not true what the CNN is saying. No, it never happened. And they said, yeah, Zelensky confirmed. Yeah, that's exactly how that telephone conversation went. When you make the Americans look stupid, you know, you are in a lot of trouble.
Who would have thought a pretty good TV comedian would get in the crosshairs of 2 American presidents. Okay? Zelensky got a whole lot more than he ever bargained, okay? Because we need to reiterate here what George and I are surmising here, and I think we're right. We've been right on this story from the very beginning, is that they want him to allow his country to be destroyed.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And he will be the fall guy for it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I agree. That's the problem here, which is that the United States want to provoke a Russian intervention, because that, and that's really always been the goal: provoke a Russian intervention. That mobilizes NATO. Everyone's on board. American leadership is back. Europe, all the independent forces in Europe, like Macron, Le Pen, everyone just shuts up. Yeah. We got to basically fall in with the Americans. Germany also, all their kind of, vague kind of neutralist feelings, that all gets suppressed. And that's it. That's the dream. And then everyone's mobilized. Serbia and Bosnia Herzegovina, they're going to have to fall in with NATO as well. No more of this. Yeah, well, we prefer neutrality. That's all gone. So that's the plan. That was always the plan. But Ukraine is in the way.
And you have to pay for it.
yeah, of course. I mean,
and you have to pay for it.
Of course, it's always, it's always, a war on someone else's doorstep, a crisis on someone else's doorstep, migrants flowing someone else's doorstep.
And energy prices.
All of that. Yeah. We're going to look after you. We're going to go around the world finding some liquefied natural gas to sell to Germany.
Well, I mean, if they're knocking on like Qatar's door, they may have some excess capacity, but they already have contracts with China, and they're not going to break those contracts.
No, that's right. But I mean, when you can look at Germany, I mean, this is a bloody big economy. I mean, how much can Qatar provide a country like Germany?
No. I mean, this is why it's not really geopolitics. This is ideology in play here, because almost all of these European actors are going against their own national interests. And all of them deep down know, what is Ukraine worth to us? It's not worth anything. However, they've boxed themselves into an alliance where they cannot say no.
That's right. That exactly. And that's really what the Americans have been doing over these years. They essentially have forged this partnership between the NATO and the EU. I mean, it's sort of, it's in the Lisbon Treaty, but it's not spelled out quite as explicitly. But then in 2016, they have formed an agreement, and the NATO-EU agreement. 2018, another NATO-EU agreement. So now NATO and EU are inseparable. I mean, and that, so exactly. So, when Josep Borrell says, hey, what about the EU? We need to be at the table. Well, no, you already signed away your independence. You allowed NATO to run your foreign policy.
And that explains getting Montenegro into NATO. That explains wanting to get Bosnia and Herzegovina, because it makes it seamless, as George just said. Okay, so you lose all control of your defense and security policy, and through the EU, you basically surrender your economic sovereignty. Okay. And so, yeah, there's plenty of natural gas out there. You just buy it from us at a markup, by the way. Okay.
Yeah.
And all your weaponry, we'll supply it. You pay for it. Okay.
That's right. Anyway, we have a super chat from Flying Boar. Nice to see you again, Flying Boar. Thank you so much. And he says, one person. Sorry, I say he. I don't know whether it's he or she. One person can save him now. And that is Putin, because Putin doesn't like Poroshenko. And then Flying Boar has another super chat. Thank you so much. And then Putin should reach out to Zelensky and convince him. I kind of agree with that. I mean, I think that Zelensky's best bet now is to make overtures to Putin. I mean, I think that he needs to make clear that, hey, I'm ready to go along with the Minsk Accords, but save me from these people, because my life is in danger. There's a limited amount that Putin can do, just like he couldn't do much for Yanukovych. He could provide asylum for him. He could live in Russia in safety, but I don't know that he can, help him out in Kiev. I mean, where these people are ready to, shoot you in the back of the head. So
I think, I don't want to sound apocalyptic here, but I think Zelensky, as things are going, only has one choice. He'd be lucky to get a fueled plane on a tarmac.
Yeah,
they would let him go. They would let him go because he's a traitor.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And Yanukovych himself it was through subterfuge that he got out of the country. I mean, he didn't get on a plane. He knew that a plane wouldn't be safe. I mean, he went by car, across the border by car. So, I would think Zelensky has to be already thinking about, the transport and how to get to the border. But that's his only passage, because I don't think he can move westward. I mean, I think that
I wonder.
They want to look westward is Poland. Poland wants to keep in with the Americans. If Poland thinks that Zelensky's fallen out with the Americans, they're not going to provide asylum for Zelensky. And he's in danger. I mean, once you're in the country of a U.S. ally, you are in danger. I mean, it's like, they're going to kill you. You're in Poland, they're going to kill you. You're in Germany, they're going to kill you.
Even if you're in Russia, getting on a plane to go to Cuba.
That's right. So I think that's because at the moment I think that the Zelensky is in real danger, and his best bet. I mean, I agree with Flying Boy. His best bet is Putin, but I think there's a limited amount that Putin can do for him.
Question to you, George. Where's the transcript?
That's right.
Where's the transcript?
Yeah, that's right. But I don't think in this case.
Where's the Vindman to leak it? Where are the other 8 or 10 or 12 people that were on the? They're not going to leak it. And why did it happen with one administration and not another? I mean, because these are the same deep state figures, okay? Right, yes. But they're not going to leak it, okay? Or if they did, maybe an abridged one. We don't know. They'd all be colluding. Who knows?
Right. No, I agree. On the other hand, there isn't really any mystery as to the content of the conversation, because Zelensky kind of confirmed it all at yesterday's news conference. I mean, it obviously went the way he said. He said, we don't see any danger of an invasion. And the more you talk this up, the more you're getting all this hysterical, the more you're damaging us. You're damaging our economy because you're causing unnecessary panic. People are pulling out their roofs, they're pulling out their investments. People are leaving the country. You are destroying us. So these are very sensible things to say.
But just remember in the fall, it took Biden forever and a day to call Zelensky, and Zelensky saying, "We need to be in NATO now." He's on Twitter. Well, you got what you wanted, didn't you? Right. You just ended up being the bait.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the bait. So now the question is, I mean, you said the Russians are going to be very wary of walking into a trap. They know that a trap is being set for them. But then it depends on what kind of a provocative incident will take place.
What it all gets down to is how will Russia react to a provocation? Okay, will they take the bait and meet the threat and escalate? See, that's the whole thing. An incident happens in the Donbass. What do they do? Okay. How long will it take? What's their first verbal response? Or they say what they usually say is, we will at the time and place of our choosing, asymmetrical reaction. Right. That's what I would expect here. But what they want is they want something for CNN they want footage, they want pictures. Okay, that's what they want.
Yes, I agree. No, I think that's right. What about how feasible is it to create some sort of a terrorist incident in Crimea? Maybe try to blow up that bridge or something like that. Is that doable? I don't know how.
I think it's when you have the will and you have the means. Yes, it can happen. Having said that, remember last spring when there was a big flare-up, there was a lot of reinforcements sent into Crimea. I mean, watching very, very close. They know they're vulnerable there. The bridge, I think they've taken care of all of the energy turbines. The Russians finally sent their own in there.
Right.
But obviously, that's a point of contact. And every single border is porous somewhere. Okay.
Right. No,
And of course, there could be elements of a fifth column even within Crimea.
yeah,
okay.
no, exactly. That it seems to me that's another area where some sort of an incident could take place. Anyway, we have another super chat from Flying Boar. Thank you so much. That's very, very generous of you. It says, "What do you guys think of carpetbagger and former heavyweight champion Klitschko saying Germany betrayed Ukraine?" So Klitsch Klitsch has a connection with Germany. He spent a number of years in Germany. I think he didn't he actually fight, as a German? I think that. However, he has to sort of realize, Germany is a major power, and and Germany has its interest, and making these snide comments about, hey, you're sending us 5,000 helmets. What's next? Pillows. These kind of comments really, that it doesn't endear him to the Germans. So I mean, there was a reason why Newland also said, Klitsch has to stay out. Yats is the guy. So what do you think, Peter?
Oh, I agree. I mean, he's obviously a political lightweight, and he's there for celebrity status more than anything else. But for him saying that to the Germans, I think that's water off the back of a duck. I don't think the Germans are listening to him at all. I mean, he was good at boxing, but politics is an avocation.
Right.
I personally have no idea what kind of power the mayor of Kiev has. I don't know. I mean, obviously, he's under the wing of some oligarch, as everyone is in Ukraine. So I don't think the Germans are going to be browbeat into this. No matter what happens, they're not going to. They just simply is not part of their DNA. They don't want to do it. I mean, they make policy mistakes in the sense of recognizing Croatia or something like that, but they're not going to send arms. They just simply won't, and I can't see how they're going to be forced to do that. Okay, but I think what you said earlier, the browbeating will work if a successful false flag provocation happens, then the Europeans will get in line. They have no other choice.
Right.
Okay, and they will pay a huge price for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. No, it's exactly right. Anyway, we have the Spectre in the Air is back. He says, yeah, sorry I missed you last week. Yeah, we missed you. Yeah, so that was, and it says, was on a date with my missus. Congratulations. But I guess the missus has given you the Saturday off. So but we're very happy to have you with us. And then Jonathan, also super chat, talks about the two presidents and the comedian. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then Flying Boar, another super chat. Thank you so much. Says Klitschko's family lives in Miami. He fought in Germany and wants to be a president of Ukraine. A classic example of a carpetbagger. I think that's exactly right. But he obviously is a lightweight. I mean, if he's not even taken seriously by Newland, I mean, Newland didn't trust him in 2014, when you might have thought, hey, he's a celebrity, and it'll be good to have this guy, as the front man for the regime. But she said, no, Klitsch has to stay out. Yats is the guy. So, and that was 2014. So I think Klitsch's moment has come and gone.
Yep. The real story is Poroshenko. I'm really glad that we talked about that earlier, because he was yesterday's snow. He was a has-been. He was washed up, and now he has not been resurrected by forces within Ukraine. It's been forces outside of Ukraine. Again, we can't overstress to everyone, as we had a great conversation with Nikolai Petrov, and he was the one that told us that it was 5 or 7 Western embassies that are calling the shots, approving, disapproving of personnel appointments and things like that. So one has to wonder, I mean, George already touched on it, and I think it's really important, is that does Zelensky have any control of the security forces and military anymore? Okay.
Right. No,
I mean, does he have control over his own bodyguard?
Yes. That's the most important question, because boy, the Americans have infiltrated, and I think that's quite likely. They've infiltrated his own personal security service. Then he may not have control of the bodyguard, because if anything happens to him, it'll immediately be blamed on the Russians. You can be absolutely sure. That's why the British put out that ridiculous story last week about the Russians planning a coup. I mean, it's like they're obviously laying the basis for a coup against Zelensky. And so, look, these coups are very nasty. Remember Ngo Diem? Oh, we didn't know he'd be killed. We were involved in the coup because we thought we wanted some more democratic form of government. We didn't think he would be murdered by the coup plotters. Gee, what a shock! I mean, he was murdered. I'm so shocked by this. So the Americans know exactly what's going on, but I think Zelensky is in a weaker position than Yanukovych, because at least Yanukovych had pretty good relations with Russia. I mean, the Russians didn't think much of the way he handled the Maidan crisis. But at least, they had a long-standing relationship going back some years. They don't have any kind of a relationship with Zelensky, and they haven't liked him at all during his years in power.
Zelensky doesn't have a relationship with anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Kolomoisky, if he is in fact the which I believe is the oligarch that is pulling his strings, I mean, he'll drop Zelensky like a brick. I mean, he's of no value to me anymore.
Right, exactly. So we got Red Z as another super chat. Says, hey, been busy with some domestic issues. Friends, remember, whatever people may call you, it only matters if spoken by one you respect. Okay, true enough. Also, I'm all in for President QAnon Shaman 2028. I know, yeah, all right, that'll be an interesting candidate. I mean, there are worse candidates than QAnon Shaman planning for 2028. Let's put it that way.
We mentioned Poroshenko. Let's go back to Saakashvili. I mean, is he being is he being washed out again and for a new role? I mean, again, would he go back to Georgia without some kind of guarantees from his former patrons? We don't know. But I mean, it's worth discussing.
No, I think, and I said that at the time. Then I thought that there was some kind of a plan there. The Saakashvili wouldn't have just gone back without some kind of guarantees, because hey, he knew that he was under he was under indictment. He'd go straight to prison.
Well, he was convicted in absentia.
Yeah, exactly. So you'd have to think, yeah, exactly. He'd already been convicted. So you'd have to think, he's not a fool. I mean, so, that somebody's looking after him, and that again, he's the sort of alternative leadership that is being presented. But I really do think that Poroshenko, I don't think the Americans were at all happy when Poroshenko was defeated. There was nothing much they could do about it, but they had to live with it. But I think it's very, very interesting, his sudden reemergence, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this week, Poroshenko will be back in charge.
It's happening. It's happening so fast. Everything is happening so fast.
Exactly. So we have a super chat from Detroit Rock City. Thank you very much, Detroit. Nice to see you again. And says, Uncle Joe must have forgotten about the war in Yemen. Yeah, I don't think he ever really gave it a lot of thought, to be honest. I mean, I think that it's just so on the back burner. He wants to keep in with the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates, and so he doesn't really care very much about that.
Well, I'm glad Joe has been brought up here, because this is the deep state's ultimate wet dream. Having a chief executive, the commander-in-chief, asleep at the wheel. You can do anything you want.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. And then we have another super chat from Flying Boar. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. It says, Zelensky had a good life as an actor, but he must regret being president. I would think that that's probably quite true. It's hard to think of why he would have thought that, particularly in Ukraine, that that's a good bet for him to become president. That, you know, it's not one of these countries where, you know, you run for office and then once your term expires, you know, you go and do other things. I mean, it's more like you expire before your term does.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, let's just kind of, you know, spitball here, George. Okay, Zelensky is dropped. He's either eliminated or made disappeared. Okay, whatever scenario, how that answer. Then the next guy comes in, starts a war because his friends in Washington and the UK, they want it. He loses the war, so they have to eliminate him too. Okay,
right.
Because he lost the war.
That's it. That's right. That's right. So that's you know, the problem that they have is it is clear that something is being planned. I mean, I'm absolutely convinced. I'm not saying it's going to happen because lots of things can happen, you know, in between now and whenever this thing is supposed to take place. But you know, I know the Americans. I mean, I know the British. I know when they're planning something, you know, that the drumbeat gets louder and louder and steadier. So clearly something is up. You know, these statements, they're getting more and more wild. You know, yesterday we had thoroughly modern Millie. Putin must stand down, and then Boris Johnson, he said he's accelerating diplomacy. That's right. He's accelerating diplomacy by flying into Ukraine, and then he's going to have a phone conversation with Putin. I don't know. I mean, is he actually going to have this conversation with Putin? I don't think he deserves a phone conversation. I mean, if I were Putin, I wouldn't talk to him on the phone. Why? What do you get out of it? He has been a completely unhelpful presence all this time. He's obviously going to continue being a thoroughly unhelpful presence. Why does he get to? I mean, Macron. I mean, you're going to say whatever you like with it, but he's sort of been, you know, in the middle, trying to be helpful. I don't think Johnson deserves a phone call. I mean, Biden has not been helpful, but at least that's the United States. You know, that's the boss. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Why is he going? Okay. He's continuing with the narrative. He needs to get out of the UK desperately and talk to people that need to escape. Okay. And he needs to pivot. He needs to pivot to be, you know, what is it? Global Britannia, they call it, or I don't know what it is.
Oh yeah, is that what it is? Yeah. Is it global? I think it's and then maybe Global Britannia or Global Britain, whatever it is. Yeah.
And then he tries to call Putin, and Putin says no. See, he won't talk to me. Case proved. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they have the call or not. It'll be spun.
Yes,
is it he's on his knees? I brought Russia to its knees. You know, some kind of bojo, you know, nonsense.
That's right. I don't know. I mean, I think they're saying that this report will be presented to him sometime over the weekend. I was hoping it would be very damaging. It may still be very damaging to him, but you know, he may use the Ukraine crisis to engineer his survival. You know, hey, I'm the wartime leader.
That's Churchill. What Biden is doing. I mean, very badly, but that's what he's doing. Right. I mean, look at his presser, everybody. Russia and Ukraine were mentioned more than any other topic. There wasn't one question on crime. Who's pivoting? These guys are pivoting. Wag the dog. This is it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. So we have a super chat from our friend Spectre in the air. And I mean, you know, unfortunately, you were a little late. So it says, any comments on the Biden phone call? Russians are going to invade Kiev. And then Zelensky said, I live here, and it's not true. So yeah, we talked about that at some length earlier on. I mean, you know, briefly, I mean, we think that Zelensky's days are numbered. The Americans are very annoyed with him. He's not going along with the American plan of shrieking that we're about to be invaded. And worse, he talked about it in public. You know, he's basically said, hey, you know, just as you say, you know, hey, I live here and I know what's going on here. So the Americans, I think, are very displeased about that. And judging by all the media reports about how Washington is sick to death of Zelensky, and that goes across the board. I mean, that's in Congress and in the White House. So everybody in Washington is sick to death of him. That sounds like he's gone. I mean, that's what we had before with Ngo Dinh Diem in '63. everyone was suddenly sick of DM. Oh, he's the man, he's the problem, he's in the way of everything. If only he was out of the picture, the war could be fought properly.
When they're ginning up a false narrative when they go to Yulia Offa as a low octane thinker. I mean, if there ever was one. Right. I mean, it's so. I read what she wrote. I mean, this is just extremism. It's incitement, and good job. That's what we wanted you to do. Thank you.
Yes, that's it.
And we know you'll do it again.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very interesting case. I mean, we talked about her before, is that, she's created a very lucrative career for herself in the United States of being a Russia hater. That's it, that she comes from Russia. She pretends that she loves Russia. Oh, I love my country. But of course, I hate everything about it. So, but she has to put on this facade where she she talks about my beloved Moscow, but really she hates Russia, and it's very lucrative. I mean, an earlier generation of emigres, they said, well, we hate communism. I mean, I just communism like Russia, but I hate communism. But I mean, that was at least an honorable position. So okay, well, you hate the communists, you hate what the Bolsheviks did to Russia. But the idea of just hating Russia, that seems to be disgusting. I mean, that's just a disgusting way to make money.
It's one of these people that says she's a political refugee when she's an immigrant. Okay.
Yes.
Immigrated at what, 5?
Something like that. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And then she went back because
I met her.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
In what context? When did you meet?
RT invited her, or she had herself invited to do a story on RT, which was very disgraceful. But that was par for the course. I totally expected it, and just painted the media outlet in the worst possible light she could, and she succeeded. I don't know why she was invited, but I didn't call the shot. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. But she interviewed you. I mean,
I was part of the story. I was like a paragraph. I think it was published by the Columbia School of Journalism.
Yeah. I think that's right. It was already a while ago. Yeah.
They cited a professor. People like myself, though he did not mention my name, they think that they're doing journalism. Yeah. That kind of tone was there. Well, they think they're doing it. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think the stenographers for Washington and the National Security State, they think they're doing journalism too.
Right. It's very interesting that people give her interviews, and then she does a hatchet job on them, and then you kind of wonder why do you do it? You knew exactly what you were going to get from her. Now RT can take care of itself, but for instance, she did
McFaul.
What is it?
Michael McFaul. She interviewed him and trashed him.
Yeah, and then but for instance, she did a profile of Melania Trump, and obviously she had access to Melania. Melania gave her interview, and of course she trashed Melania, but you kind of wonder, why did she do that? What was Melania thinking, giving her? And of course, she's going to do a number on you. She hates Trump. I mean, so obviously that's that she's going to.
Well, I mean, she accused and had to beg for forgiveness that she made some kind of reference that Trump was having an incestuous relationship with his daughter.
That I think, she got fired from one of the outlets. I think she was working for Politico at the time. She got fired for that.
But she failed upward.
She failed upward, exactly. Yeah, that's right. That was. I think it was a tweet. I think maybe I don't know. I can't remember. But she put it in an article, or she tweeted this out that Trump was having an incestuous relationship.
Well, and she had another huge. I don't remember what it was, but she has. This seems to be like a Biden thing with her, just gaffe after gaffe. Okay. Right. But I mean, to quote her as a Russia expert, it's just laughable on its face. I mean, really.
That's right. I don't know whether you remember. It was I think it was just after 2014. It was in 2014, just immediately after the Crimean crisis, and maybe even after the shoot down of the airliner. She was invited on MSNBC, and she was on with Lawrence O'Donnell. Now, O'Donnell is completely hysterical, and O'Donnell's point was that Putin is a fascist, he's Hitler, he's basically Russia is a Nazi dictatorship. And her point was that, no, Putin is just a petty tyrant. And they got into a shouting match. I mean, it was a vehement shouting match. Like, these two awfully idiots. It's stimulating when giant intellects get together. What's it? Oh, no, he's Hitler. No, he's just a petty tyrant. But she got very upset about this because she doesn't expect to be treated in such a fashion, being screamed at. And then she wrote about this. And a blog or something, and she says something like, I'm an effing expert, and I get treated like this. So that's it. She actually said, the blog was full of the F word, I'm an effing expert.
Yeah, well, I like Mexican food, but it doesn't make me an expert on Mexico. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Low octane thinkers,
yes.
Okay, and
yes.
they go for the bottom feeders, okay,
that's right.
Because they're the ones that are most hysterical. That's what they want. Hysteria. That's what they want.
Exactly, and that's why Stephen Cohen, I think, when he used to do those broadcasts with John Batchelor, very good shows, and then Batchelor said, well, Julia Ioffe has written this long article about Putin. I can't remember, was it at the Atlantic or so on? And the guy was like, well, I really don't want to talk about this article, and I really don't want to talk about Julia Ioffe because I really don't want to give her any kind of credibility. So I think I'm just going to give it a pass on this subtopic. And I think that's right. I mean, that don't give her any sort of credibility that she has anything serious to say about Russia.
Yeah, well, Max Boot, he's gainfully employed again. Good old Max, okay. We need a hateful message on Moscow. No problem. I'll be in. I'll be in the studio, and in a New York minute. Okay, I'll be there. Okay,
that's right.
The same people come out all the time. If they look at what they talked about in Iraq, 2003, and they just keep failing upward.
That's right. And they come on. And I don't know, it was very amusing because Tucker Carlson had had a montage of talking heads, among whom was, of course, Max Boot. And he said, well, say goodbye to Max Boot because next week he'll be flying to Kiev.
Yeah, well, they found their Spanish Civil War.
Backpack.
They found their Spanish Civil War. I hope they all go. I hope they all go. Okay.
Yeah, except that, of course, they don't go. I mean, all of them, every single one of these people is a chicken hawk. Every single one. I mean, it's not like there isn't one of them who has done a day's service in the military. I mean, not one. I mean, it's across the board. The Bill Cristols, the David Fromms, the Max Boots, all the whole crowd, who are baying for war with Russia. Not one of them ever volunteered, and did a moment's military service. So yeah, I think they're going to give it. Oh, my hip isn't as good as it used to be. Oh, I've got a bad ankle. Oh, and I've got an impacted tooth. I don't think I can make it.
Just a thought that went through my head just now. I wonder if Zelensky has a dossier on the Bidens.
Well, that's an interesting. That I think is.
I don't know if that protects him. I think that puts him more in danger.
Absolutely.
Somebody has collected all of it. Somebody has, because they're always looking for leverage. Okay. Yes. And that's what intelligence services do. I'm trying to be objective here. That's what they do. Okay. Right. But the Bidens have a much longer history there than they're allowing us to know and to believe. I just have
I agree. And I think it's very interesting that aspect of it hasn't really been discussed, because remember, Poroshenko played along with Biden's schemes. I mean, when Biden wanted that prosecutor fired, and remember, that prosecutor was a friend of Poroshenko's. I mean, so, and Poroshenko nonetheless went along with it. And, I can't remember his name, but he said, well, when he fired me, he was quite apologetic about it. And he said, hey, the boss told me to fire you, you're fired. So Poroshenko has a good relationship with the Biden family. Zelensky, if you remember in that phone call, he was quite friendly to Trump, and he was not unsympathetic to Trump's demands, because he was saying, yeah, these people were not really my friends. They all hated me, particularly Masha and that whole gang in the U.S. embassy. Who were basically, they were just Obama Biden people. And so Zelensky pretty much said, yeah, these people are not my friends. And he did promise to cooperate with the investigation. I mean, when Trump told him, hey, well, keep in touch with Bill Barr, he said, yeah, will do. So, that aspect of it really hasn't been explored as far as I know.
No. What we're seeing is a construction of a narrative made in the USA and made in the UK. We can't overstress when Zelensky said it was a bad phone call. That's what he's going to be remembered for, George.
Yes.
Ever.
It was not a good phone call. Anyway, we have
bad phone call. Death by bad phone call. Or at least political death. Let's put it in perspective.
Yes, I think so. And so we have a super chat here. So again, we have Spectre in the air. So sorry I was late. I just finished a really hard 50-kilometer trainer bike ride. Wow.
Again.
Yeah.
You trying to shame us?
Exactly. I mean, I feel, wow. I do feel ashamed of that. Brain probably little starved for oxygen. No, I think you're doing good. I think you probably your brain is stimulated, and so that's and then we have Jonathan who says Biden administration now asking Orban to host troops in Hungary aimed at Russia after Biden demonized him for months. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And it says, how do you say no in Hungarian? Well, no in Hungarian is nem. Nem. So that's a good. It has a nice ring to it. Nem. So
and yes is Egan.
And Egan is yes, exactly.
And beer is sure.
Exactly.
That's about my and Egeshegadra. That means
is health. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Good health. That's very good. Well, right. Peter the linguist.
4 words.
It's more than most people have. And then we have another super chat from Triumph 95 1000. And it says, good job, guys. Can't wait to watch General Milley's new woke US military fight before the Battle of Kharkov. Yeah, that's another aspect of it, which is we have a kind of woke military, and then this goes together with this bluster as if somehow the Biden administration is presiding over the Wehrmacht, that just sweeps away all opposition. I mean, this is I don't think so. I think the military have fought very poorly in most recent wars. I mean, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and of course before that in Vietnam. I mean, the Americans did not fight well in Vietnam. So I just, but here you're really picking on a very formidable target. I mean,
Well, I mean, George, Milley wants to fight white supremacy and white rage. What a better place to do it than Ukraine.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. White rage. So that's
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I wonder, are they going to paint all the planes in rainbows and the bombs?
Well, I would have thought so. I mean, wouldn't you have thought so? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but that's really the problem, that they didn't fight very well in these previous wars. It's hard to understand why they should feel so confident, in taking on the Russians. I don't know. I mean, it's Hitler felt confident. But that, first of all, he presided over the Wehrmacht, which up until then had been invincible. But he fell a cropper pretty soon.
I mean, when after the first 6 weeks of the war, he started having stomach problems because he knew that he had miscalculated. Okay, I mean, and with Operation Blue, I mean, that's when his health started which culminated in the Battle of Kursk. Okay, then that was the end. That was the end. Okay, that was the end of the last offensive on the Eastern Front.
Right. No, that's right. But you're absolutely right that by about September, the German generals were realizing that this is going to be very problematic. That they may already have missed the bus. So despite all the apparent victories, this army collapsed, that army collapsed, we've captured 2 million Russians or whatever, they already knew that they weren't progressing very, very well. And so that was already by December. So even before the Battle of Moscow, the Germans knew that things had gone badly wrong.
Well, the thing is that in bringing it to the present, Millie isn't going to send American troops to fight in Ukraine. No, that's not in the cards. Okay, the Americans want this conflict, if it were to happen, which I think is likely now. He wants it, to the last Ukrainian,
right, exactly.
and particularly Zelensky. Okay.
So we got a super chat from Al QK, and he says, a response to those who argue that, quote, not 1 inch eastward, unquote, referred only to Germany. Well, I mean, I think we talked about this before. I mean, the point is that when James Baker said this to Gorbachev in February 1990, the Warsaw Pact was still in existence. So when you say not 1 inch eastward, you're obviously not referring to the countries of the Warsaw Pact. You're referring to Germany. He said we're not moving into areas
after the unification.
After the unification, exactly. So this was February 1990. So it's only 3 months after the opening of the Berlin Wall. So and then he said, okay, he was basically saying, I mean, what they were discussing was what will happen to Germany. Will a united Germany be a member of NATO, or will it be outside of NATO? And so Baker said, look, I think you Russians, I know you have a historic problem with Germany. Wouldn't you feel more secure if Germany were in NATO rather than outside of NATO? But if it is in NATO, there'll be not 1 inch eastward, because obviously you're obviously going to feel very insecure about that. But the issue of the Warsaw Pact at that stage doesn't even come up. So if you say not 1 inch eastward when it comes to Germany, and Germany doesn't even have a border with the Soviet Union, then by implication, ipso facto, you obviously are referring to the countries of the Warsaw Pact. I mean, it would be very peculiar for Baker to say not 1 inch eastward, but that only applies to Germany. We can move eastward right up to Romania and Bulgaria, Hungary, right all the way to the Black Sea. I mean, it would be absolutely ridiculous for Baker to mean just that.
What's so amazing to me, George, and I'm sure you see it over and over again, but there is no record of the Russians, claim this, but there's no record this has ever been said. It's all over the place. It's easy to find accounts of people that were in the room, but I've come across these things on cable news. But the Russians claim, but this is not. That's a myth. That's an urban myth that Putin made it.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. It's an urban myth. And the media continued to repeat it. New York Times, the Russians claim without evidence that a promise was made to Gorbachev not to expand NATO. And you have the record. I mean, a record, particularly the National Security Archive, which has published a number of the documents, and the number of the documents clearly say, British ambassadors who took part in the meetings, and everybody else was saying that obviously the implication was Germany will be allowed to join NATO, and there'll be no one will not 1 inch eastward. That's it. So they're not going to move their forces into any part of the former German Democratic Republic. And obviously there was no plans there to move the former Warsaw Pact countries, but still at that time, still part of the Warsaw Pact, still in existence. There's no plan to move NATO forces in there. So now the New York Times continues to repeat, Boris Yeltsin, Bill Clinton and Boris Yeltsin agreed that countries will be free to join whatever military alliance they want. When did this agreement take place? I mean, and then they repeat the same line. Oh, Boris Yeltsin, Putin wants to overturn the agreement reached by Bill Clinton and Boris Yeltsin that every country will be able to join its military alliance. Well, where is it? There's never a link. When this agreement take place? Is there a link to a conversation that took place between them? The fact that Boris Yeltsin was unable to prevent this, that doesn't mean there was an agreement. Yeltsin was just unable to stop this, but there was no agreement.
Exactly. There's an account that when Yeltsin was in Warsaw, and this was afoot here, and the story goes, I'm not going to confirm it, but a story that I heard is that we all know that Boris had a thing for drink, and they got him really boozed up, and they were kind of softening him up, and then he finally, even in stupor, he said, no, I don't agree to that. Even that kind of malign behavior. Right.
Yes.
They thought they could soften him up, liquor him up, but he said, no, I don't. We can't agree.
That's it. That's right. And then even when they signed that NATO-Russia Foundation Agreement in 1997, Yeltsin was very wary, but just by signing this agreement. But there was nothing in the agreement to say everybody can join NATO, and then NATO will take in anyone who wants to join. And what was in the agreement was no permanent stationing of NATO forces in any of the countries that were members of the Warsaw Pact. That's in that agreement. But there's no agreement on in existence in which Boris Yeltsin said, well, any country can join NATO. I mean, it's just simply nonsensical. But of course, again, the New York Times just manufactures history. All the news fit to print. They just say these things, and then and every article just keeps repeating this. And there was an agreement, and then people just accept it. Okay, well, there was an agreement. That's right. And then, but the Russians come along and say, well, here's the Helsinki Final Act. It says security is indivisible. Here is the Paris Charter. That 1990, security is indivisible. Then we have the OSCE documents, the 1999 OSCE summit in Istanbul. There's the Astana statement to 2010, and it's all there. There it is. They all say security is indivisible. Why would they put those words in if they didn't say what we know them to say, which is no one can secure his own security at the expense of someone else?
And that's why we had 2 weeks of useless talks, okay? Because the Russians will say security is indivisible, and then Stoltenberg, hit speed dial, but anyone can join NATO. See, they're talking at cross purposes. They're not even talking to each other.
That's right. That's right. And that's why, and it's so annoying because, we say, oh, listen to the Helsinki Final Act. Well, you say, well, first of all, it's not in the Helsinki Final Act. But I mean, leaving aside the Helsinki, so that also said that borders were inviolable. I mean, you kind of broke those agreements along the way, but then you come to all these other agreements where it says, okay, you can make your own arrangements for security, but your security cannot come at the expense of someone else's. They put those words in. There was a reason why they put those words in. They didn't just say, hey, everybody can join whatever alliance they want. That's not what it says.
That's right. Well, then what happened to Kosovo? What happened to Cyprus? Okay. Exactly. Borders are sacrosanct. Which ones, apparently, because you're choosy.
Right. That's very, very, very choosy. I mean, it's always a classic when they say something like, well, we can't go back to the old days when borders were changed by force. I seem to remember Kosovo, the borders of Serbia were changed by force. And the classic was Thoroughly Modern Millie yesterday brought up the Budapest Memorandum of 1994. So the Budapest Memorandum, for people who don't know, it was the one in which basically the nuclear weapons on Ukraine soil were transferred to the Russian Federation. there's so much nonsense is talked about that, because they say, oh, Ukraine had nuclear weapons.
Gave them up. They gave them up.
But they never had nuclear weapons because
they weren't theirs.
It was always under Russian command. I mean, it was initially under Soviet command. And then since the Russian Federation was the successor state of the Soviet Union, it was always under Russian command. There was never one moment when the Ukrainian armed forces were in control of the nuclear weapons. This is all such nonsense. It's like saying Belgium is a nuclear power or Italy is a nuclear power because there are nuclear weapons on Italian soil, but they're under American control. There's not one moment when they come under Italian control. But anyway, the point about they said, oh, the Budapest Memorandum, where Russia signed and said it accepts the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and whatnot of Ukraine. This is just boilerplate. I mean, the Security Council Resolution 1244 said, hey, Serbia's territorial integrity of Serbia is recognized by the United Nations Security Council. It says there, that's Security Council Resolution 1244. And what happened to that? I mean, so, the idea that you're going to bring up boilerplate, like, well, we recognize territorial integrity and think, oh, hey, the Budapest Memorandum. So you're going to go to war on the basis of the bloody Budapest Memorandum with no one in the world knows what the hell it is.
I mean, if you look at the Budapest Memorandum, it also talks about forcing Ukraine to accept certain trade deals and trade relations. What was the association agreement all about? Okay, right. People don't go into that part of it. Okay, right. And since you mentioned 1244, the United Nations Security Resolution, right. I'm very proud to say that the day that the NATO countries violated it, I was in RT's news studio, and I had a copy of the resolution, and live on air, I tore it into pieces and I threw it in the air. I was a national hero in Serbia. I really was. I could have had drinks, drinks are on us. Okay.
Well, that's right. And of course, what's interesting about that is that Yugoslavia is a very sore point with the Russians. So it's bad enough, as Glenn Deason in last week's crosstalk, who said, it's nonsense that NATO is defensive. Look at Yugoslavia, look at Libya. So, but it's even worse than that, because it was aggressive against an ally and a kind of a friend and a little brother to Russia. So it's like it's not just that you're aggressive against us because you attack our little brother. That's why NATO's, when they say things like, well, NATO was defensive, they're a defensive alliance, that moron Stoltenberg, it just riles the Russians up. I mean, I think it's amazing that they managed to stay calm when they listened to this drill.
How many days? It was 78 days?
78 days, yeah.
Yeah, that's defensive, George.
Very defensive. Yeah.
What was the Serbian Air Force doing?
Well, they basically, the Air Force couldn't really take them on because they managed to maintain their height, and they knew they couldn't really take, again, NATO Air Force. I mean, it's always good. It's like a heavyweight, fighting a flyweight boxer. Why, this is good. Whack, whack, whack. It's so much fun. It's so easy to defeat.
When you're at 38,000 feet in the air,
right.
That was my whole point. You're punching down a country that cannot defend itself. Okay.
Exactly.
But it's defensive, George.
It's very defensive. So anyway, we have another super chat from Spectre in the air. Thank you, Spectre. Good to have you back. So speaking of military, US and China are racing to recover the F-35 that fell off the carrier into the sea. Military is screwed if China gets it. Such a corrosion of leadership in the US. So, do you have any thoughts on that, Peter?
Well, I don't know what's wrong with the US Navy, and it's one mishap after another. Ships run into each other. Some guy sets one of these big ships on fire. It burns for a week in San Diego. Okay, and planes dropping off. What is going on? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, yes. I don't know. I mean, I know it can be boring. I mean, is everybody high in the American Navy?
Yeah. Was it? Yeah, it lasted for several days. What happened to the culprit or the suspect? I mean, did they ever catch the?
Yeah, they got him. They got him.
And he's been arrested or what?
Yeah, it's a really, really murky story. Okay, it's very murky. I remember it was actually in one of the U.S. military trade journals. Because I just like everybody else, they're just seeing in the center of San Diego, this huge ship is on fire, and it goes on fire for like a week. You can't even put it out. Okay, and it was sketchy memory. He had a lot of gripes with the military.
Yes, that's right.
And it was a disgruntled sailor, and I guess he just didn't understand the magnitude of the damage. I mean, they had to get rid of it. They're scrapping it. They can't fix it.
Right. Well, I guess it's because there's just so much fuel on board that the fire just isn't going to go out. I mean, it's
the type of alloy that these ships are made of. It absorbs heat. Okay, so it's very counterintuitive. I mean, it was like in the Falkland Islands conflict. I mean, it was the Belgrano,
HMS Belgrano.
But there was another ship that was destroyed. There was another. I mean, it was
the Belgrano. I mean, that was the British sank that ship. Yeah, it was in the HMS. It was an Argentine ship that the British sank.
It used to be an American battleship. It survived Pearl Harbor, only to be destroyed by the British.
But it was a particularly terrible thing because an awful lot of Argentine sailors died, and so it was a long-standing outrage in Britain. There were investigations about it. So why did you destroy this? I mean, given it was already sailing away, the British had established this kind of a blockade of the island, and so they said, oh, Belgrano violated the no-go area, but in fact it wasn't. It was already moving away from it. So, but even so, the British sank it. So I don't know, maybe around 900 sailors died. So
you need the pictures, George, to convince the public. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, we got another super chat from Spectre in the Air. Thank you so much, Spectre. Says the woke military is what is wrong with the military. Fuel and metal love to burn when hot enough. Yeah, that's right. I mean, every time I see thoroughly modern Millie, like yesterday when he was giving this press conference, it's very hard to take him seriously now, because I'm always thinking of him, with his lipsticks and wearing a dress. I mean, I can't get that image out of my mind.
I associate light blue lingerie with him for some reason. Okay, I don't know why. Maybe I need a psych evaluation. I don't know. Okay.
Well, he made such a fool of himself, because you remember when they were talking about this this author that was being recommended. This is I forgot his name. This the Kennedy Ibram Kennedy.
Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever Kennedy.
It's not his real name anyway.
No, it's not his real name. That's right. And then he said, well, I want to understand, white rage. And then he says, I want to know about communism. So, I want to read Karl Marx, and I want to read Mao Zedong, and I want to read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. There was an obvious logical problem here, which was you want to find out about communism. So you read Marx, Mao, and Lenin, fine. But when it comes to white rage, you want to read the person who denounces white rage. In other words, you don't actually make an effort to understand white rage, because after all, there are writers that you could consult and find out what they think, but he doesn't do that. You go to this guy, Ibram Kendi. So, I mean, it was such an obvious logical fallacy. You have to think, this guy must be really dumb as not to see how stupid what he's saying is.
Well, I think the more political you are, the more likely you're to succeed. Yeah. Okay, and I think that's the problem here. He sees the how the winds are blowing, and he wants to get on top because he's thoroughly incompetent. Incompetent. I mean, really. Okay. It goes back to something George and I have talked about since the inception of the Gaggle. Is that when you look at the early years of the Soviet Union, they had this huge dilemma of red versus expert, because they wanted loyalty. Loyalty was so important because it was
exactly right.
But you need experts like to run the trains, okay?
Exactly.
And they had the most difficult time trying to resolve it. And we're in a stage now in the neoliberal stage in the West, is that they're going to take the red at at a drop of a hat. Forget the expert, okay? I mean,
Yeah.
Joe Biden goes to Pennsylvania to talk about infrastructure, and I was talking with Robert Bridge, a friend of mine. He lived right next door to that bridge. He was telling I used to go across it back and forth all the time, and it just collapsed. Okay, but it's better to have a loyal acolyte, because bridges fall and they kill people. But
Yeah.
if you're on the right side of power, you're going to be fine.
Yes, yes, no question. I mean, that's exactly it. These people are all essentially politicians. They're not there as military experts. And you're absolutely right about the Bolsheviks. I mean, they had a real problem on their hands, and when Stalin realized they're actually fighting rather poorly, and you really need that. When you're up against the Wehrmacht, you're going to need your best of the best in charge. And boom, he suddenly fired all the commissars and told Zhukov and others, hey, you do what you need to do.
And Stalin is one of the most peculiar, interesting, terrifying historical figures that we know of. But when Zhukov and the other generals said, we're not going to win this war if these political woke thugs, that's what they would say then. Yeah. If they keep sticking their beak in, we're done. And then Stalin said, get rid of them.
Okay? That's right. Exactly. That's right. And suddenly, hey, the experts were in charge. And then, of course, after the war, then once again things kind of relapsed back to normal. Zhukov was fired as in gratitude for all that he had done for the country. He was sent packing. But then, of course, he was brought back by Khrushchev because he needed the military, when he was performing his coup against his rivals within the Communist Party. So Zhukov was suddenly brought out of retirement.
One of my very good friends, George Watts, God bless his soul, he died a little over a year and a half ago. But he, because of his knowledge of English, he was from Canada. There were Soviet citizens that wanted to improve their English. And he came across a young couple, and he became friends with them and friendly and all that. He had no idea that it was the son-in-law of Zhukov. And so his friend, he found out, was not feeling well. And George, being the good soul he was, he said, he gave him a call and said, can I drop by? He said, sure. And so, he opens the door, and the friend's wife opened the door, the daughter of the general. And she said, oh, George, come on in, come in. And then, this a towering figure kind of walked by, and George just said he couldn't believe his eyes. He said, oh, this is my father. This is General Zhukov. And it was on the day of the May Day, the Victory Day parade. And it's when Zhukov was on the outs. Yep. And so the wife went to take care of her husband, the son-in-law. And so George is in this big room. He's with General Zhukov. This is a Canadian guy, okay? Basically a peasant. George wouldn't be offended if I said that. Right. And Zhukov just said, what are you drinking? And George said, well, it's like 11 o'clock in the 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, whatever you're having. And he pulled out cognac, and he poured George cognac. And they watched the parade. And he said he drank a bottle of cognac and didn't say a word. And here's George. Look, he was a skinny little guy, just probably holding his drink.
That's a great story.
Wonderful.
It's very interesting, isn't it? You're suddenly in the presence of a legend, and you have no idea. You have no idea what to say. And I've been in the presence of people. Suddenly they're very famous. And then I always know I'm going to say something stupid. I just know, you're going to just say something stupid. And I've always done that, just out of nervousness, you just say something silly. And but probably when you're in presence of somebody who's famous. I met Enoch Powell once at a party, and Powell was. He wasn't interested in important people or celebrities and so on. So he started talking to me. I was the least important person there. So he started talking to me and so asking me questions. And I can't remember what I said, but I remember thinking afterwards, God, he must have thought I was a complete idiot because because I was just saying stupid things, and I was just relieved when somebody joined us and finally, he stopped talking to me, and he started attending to someone else. But I think that's what happens when you're in the case of somebody who's famous and you want to impress them, you're going to say something silly.
A few years ago, I went to the Valdai discussion group in Sochi, and Lavrov was giving a keynote. And so he was giving the keynote after the buffet. And so I was, most of the talks were not very interesting to me, at least personally. And so I was one of the first at the buffet. And so I had a really wonderful meal. And Lavrov and Gromov and Peskov, they had a little separated section in the restaurant. So I'm done, and I thought I'd go out for a walk, and I see Lavrov, and I just walk right up to him, and I said, Foreign Minister Lavrov, I'm Peter Levin. I said, I know who you are. And I said, I don't want to interrupt your lunch. I just would really like a selfie. And he said, sure. I got a picture of him. And I said, I hope, gentlemen, you enjoy your lunch. And he patted me on the back. He said, we'll talk to you soon, Peter. Very, very casual, really relaxed. And I just purposely didn't want to say anything other than, hey, I'm here. I know who you are. I want a picture. I'm going to leave you alone. Enjoy your meal. That's very good. Exactly. That's right. Exactly. You don't want to then, hey, this is my moment. How often do you get to meet Lavrov? So I better ask a question because, that's the kind of thing I would do. But yeah, that's not a good idea. He is impressive, more impressive in person than you see. He's a very impressive person. And he's pretty easygoing. He likes to smoke cigarettes. He's a smoker. Yeah, I've seen pictures of him, yeah. He also plays football. I think he plays football every Sunday. So I think he's quite a good footballer. I mean, well, I think he likes to go to the solarium too, because he has got. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But anyway, so we have a Spectre in the air. Another super chat. He said, good example, replace Bayer. Biden must be a black female. How about the most competent instead? So I think you're talking about the replacement of Justice Stephen Breyer. He was bundled out. I've never seen that done. A Supreme Court justice, quite a prominent, he's been there something like almost 30 years almost, just being bundled out of office, unceremoniously. And then they say, well, the replacement will be, has to be a black female. It's an amazing kind of thing of, you think, well, you're on the Supreme Court, you're supposed to be, this is the highest court in the land. You're reviewing all of the decisions that have sort of bubbled up, up to the highest court. And your only qualification is that you're a woman and you're black. I mean, well, George, this is the ultimate case of bigotry of low expectations. That's what it is, bigotry of low expectations. I feel, I'm not part of the Federalist Society. I'm not looking at, who's coming. I don't do that, okay? But I have to assume there are competent black women for the job. Why not? Okay, but that is going to be a stigma. You're just a result of bigotry of low expectation. That's why you have your job. Okay, that is a disgrace to someone that is probably perfectly competent, but that's going to be lingering in everyone's mind, including this person's mind, for the time that they're on the court. Okay, I think it was such a disgraceful way to do this here. So George, I have to break it to you. You're not going to be the nominee. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But that raises another interesting question, which is it possible now, whether there's a Democratic president or whether there's a Republican president, to hire men in general and white men in particular? Because anytime you're going to go for a man, you can be sure that there's going to be a Kavanaugh type hearing, because women are going to come forward and say, yeah, I went on a date with him 40 years ago and he groped me after the date, and then he pestered me with phone calls afterward. Any time it's a man, you now know there's a certain pattern that is set, which will be women coming forward. Unless the man is gay. Maybe if you're gay, you can still do it. For now.
for now. But otherwise, I just don't think you can do it anymore for a man, and particularly a white man. I mean, it's just you can't bring on white men anymore. I mean, so women always safe. Unlikely there's going to be skeletons in her cupboard of that type. I mean, maybe ideological, but nothing of the sort of groping and inappropriate comments and all that.
One of the things that is said repeatedly, and I tend to agree with it, Justice Roberts, which I do not like, okay? Yeah. But it's been said that one of his primary goals on his remaining time on the bench is to preserve the dignity and sanctity of the court. Well, what the garbage that Biden has spewed out has damaged the court so much. And I don't want to make George and I sound like, we belong in a nursing home, but when we were coming up, the Supreme Court was something you took very seriously, okay? Right. Politicians are corrupt, they're clowns, they're jerks, they're egomaniacs, okay? But I guess that's the Supreme Court now, too.
Right,
that's
right.
sad.
Yep, that's right. Anyway, we've got another super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Since Biden is intent on nominating a black woman, why not Tawana Brawley? Tawana Brawley. You remember Tawana Brawley? Back in the late 1980s, Tawana Brawley. She was a black. I think she was a teenager at the time. She went out, on the town with some guys. She was afraid. She spent the night out. And she was afraid of how her parents would respond. So she came up with the story that she was assaulted by some white cops. And of course, all the sort of the race hucksters. Al Sharpton, and then there were these two black lawyers, very prominent in New York at the time, Maddox and Mason. And they all joined in, and it just went on and on. There's every day, the Tawana Brawley, white cops assaulted her, and then of course eventually, it was discovered that she'd made the whole thing up. But she had damaged the reputation because she actually named the cops who did this. So she damaged her reputation. But the amazing thing is that neither Sharpton nor Maddox nor Mason were in any way damaged by this. Hey, you're a complete hustler. You fell for an absolute garbage, and they just went on. To the next, their merry way.
To the next one.
To the next one, exactly. And they do this, and there are so many of these black lawyers. They're the kind of the equivalent of the ambulance chaser. They seize on any issue. Oh, there's racism here. I can make a ton of money because I know that the city government is going to settle. The question is now, how much are they going to settle for? And I'm going to get 30% of what they settle for, and that's a lot of money. I mean, Benjamin Crump, he's a very wealthy man. 30% of all of these cases, involving racism, that can make you very rich very quickly.
Yeah, well, it's the liberal Karen wine drinkers that let this happen. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It really is. but that's it. It's like the way these this way that they work with, and Sharpton. This is a complete, a ghastly person. I mean, the idea of building your whole career. I mean, we talked about Julia Ioffe. You built a whole career out of hating Russia. You build a whole career out of sniffing out racism. It's a lucrative gig, sniffing out racism. He's a man of very limited talents. You remember MSNBC hired him, and they gave him a TV show. He wasn't able to carry on the TV show. I mean, the ratings tanked. I mean, he couldn't even get blacks to watch it because blacks, so they want to watch sport like everyone else. They want to sport, soaps, the usual things. I don't want to watch Al Sharpton ranting and raving.
Well, what's that race woman's name over at MSNBC?
Oh yeah, I know what I mean. Joanne Reed.
She's probably going to be out. In the next
Exactly. They gave her that 7 o'clock slot, and she didn't, didn't get the ratings. But of course, we know why that is, because that's racism. But it's always very funny because she's a good example that she's the victim and always plays the
Harvard
victim.
educated.
Harvard, exactly. She went to Harvard. Not many people in America go to Harvard. I mean, many apply to Harvard and would love to get into Harvard. Very, very few are accepted in Harvard. And once you have the Harvard pedigree, doors open for you. I mean, it's
I forget she went to Harvard with another very famous person. I heard this a couple of days ago.
Yeah, me too. I heard that as well. I think it was the judge, one of the judges who was being spoken about as
yeah. That's
one of the nominees, the Supreme Court nominees.
I want to make it really clear, this bigotry of low expectations. This is so damaging to the Black community itself. I mean, you need extra help. I need extra time. It's so insulting. It's so insulting.
I agree. It's like I had that experience when I did a little bit of teaching in high schools in New York City, that often they just know that they don't have to do any work. I mean, often, you go into a classroom and then people aren't doing anything. And then even though, they're supposed to be preparing for a test, this is a test, this was the SAT, that's a big test. They weren't bothering. They just couldn't be bothered. You ask them to open their computers, they're not going to open their computers. Because they know that it doesn't matter how low their score is, they're still going to be able to get in to, maybe not Harvard, but maybe something a little bit below Harvard, maybe Princeton. And once you know that you don't have to try hard, then of course, first of all, you don't make any real effort. But more seriously, and this is what comes back to your tyranny of low expectation, you come to resent the people who have such low expectations of you. I mean, the people who are going to give you a place in Princeton without you having to bother for it, well, you're going to just have contempt for those people, and also have a low opinion of yourself, because no one has any expectation of you.
Look at that district attorney in Chicago. What's her name? Kim.
Kim, is it Fox? Is that her name?
Kim Fox.
Kim Fox, yeah.
Well, what an incompetent person. I mean, grossly incompetent.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Anyway, we have another super chat from our friend Spectre in the Air. Thank you so much. And he says, let's not forget voter ID. Oh, minority people don't have IDs, such BS. Yeah, that's exactly. And what is more, it was always egregious, the idea that minorities can't get photo IDs. It's particularly abysmal when we're living at a time when people are demanding additional IDs. Your health, you're going to come in with your health record in order to be able to get a table in a restaurant.
Well, come on, you can walk across the border and get an ID, okay? Right. I mean, come on, give me a break, okay? So all these people don't have bank accounts. Yeah. None of these people fly. None of these people go into federal buildings. Yeah. None of these, are you serious?
You can't go into a building. In New York City, you cannot go into a building without presenting a photo ID. They're not going to let you in. They're just not going to let you in. I mean, but these days, they're not even going to let you in without a photo ID. And they're not even going to let you in unless you can prove that you've been vaccinated. I mean, that's just not, you go to a building where they will not let you in unless you can prove that you are who you are and that you've been vaccinated. I mean, that's it. So. But when it comes to elections, no, you don't need to come up with any idea. Well, of course, it was always this BS was always about fraud. I mean, how do we have fraudulent elections? Where you have fraudulent elections, you come in and then you want to vote. Hey, I want to vote, so you just they let you vote. I mean, we saw what happened in 2020. I mean, that's the only reason why the Democrats fight this relentless battle against voter ID. Hey, the more people who vote, the merrier, particularly people who are in the country illegally.
Yeah, and particularly cycle after cycle, minorities vote more than whites, percentage-wise.
Right.
I mean, it's such a switch and bait thing. It's a voting rights. No, it's not. It's an anti-theft. You know, we're fighting for
Right.
making it harder to cheat. That's all.
That's right. That's right. But I mean, it's a very interesting thing, because the key is always you redefine things to make something sound very reasonable. So you say, oh, this is about voting rights, allowing people to cheat, allowing people to vote even though they're not qualified to vote. That becomes voting rights. But it's the same thing what we have now, which is that, you know, like with Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson wants to accelerate diplomacy by sending arms to Ukraine, and that's it. That's in the Guardian today. He said, he wants to give diplomacy a chance by sending more arms. Okay, that's it. So that you just say, okay, that how do you facilitate diplomacy? Well, you send arms, and you come up with this wild, ridiculous rhetoric.
I have to wonder with Bojo going, is he going to avoid Zelensky, George?
Okay, depends on which day. I mean, Zelensky may not be around by Monday, so So anyway, we've got another super chat from Spectre in the Air. Thank you so much, like, they're very, very generous of you. So I was in New York City for work. I had to show Vax card for breakfast buffet. And then
as you
should, exactly. I mean, and then he says, about Pennsylvania, the court ruling in Pennsylvania yesterday, which is something that was always we suspected, which is that when they changed the law in Pennsylvania to allow mail-in voting, it was a violation of the Constitution. The Constitution of Pennsylvania said you can't change the voting practice without a change in the Constitution. This was always obvious. I mean, there was, and so the court yesterday made the appropriate ruling, probably be overturned because, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is entirely a political body. They're all basically elected.
They're elected.
They're elected. There's a Democratic majority, and and that it'll probably be overturned. But in terms of the judicial weight, I mean, this is clearly right.
They always latches, but they always hold out. Well, it's done. It's no. You can bring this to a court 100 years from now. There is no time limit on this, and they always go, well, it's that was it's done. Right. No, right. They fall back on this. I mean, very rarely did I ever come across that term latches. Only until last year, George. Then it's common currency.
That's it. That's right. And that's the point. When you've got a constitutional argument, that's always you can bring a constitutional argument anytime you want, because it's a constitutional matter. So the whole idea, this is not timely. The election is long gone. Doesn't matter. This is a constitutional matter.
That's right. There is no time limit on this here.
Yes. Yeah.
They're always trying to convince us.
That's exactly it. Yep. All right, Peter, what do you think? You want to?
Yeah, I mean, everybody have to get ready for crosstalk tomorrow. George isn't going to be on, but George will be on for a long time after that. I guarantee you. Okay.
That's good. Yes. So yeah.
Don't worry. George and I have made a commitment to watching this story. We're gonna, if we have to do a lot of videos every single day, we will do that. Okay. We'll keep everybody up to date on them. This is our wheelhouse. Okay. So don't worry.
Right. We got to commit. And there's a lot going on. That's right. And we, as we discussed earlier, it's clear that something big is being planned. I mean, I think that within the next few days could be quite dramatic.
And for
the UN Security Council. Yeah.
And for Zelensky, it's not going to be a TV sitcom.
I don't think so. So we have the UN Security Council meeting on Monday. Whenever you have these staged incidents, they always tend to happen just as there's a UN Security Council meeting. So we had those situations a number of times in Yugoslavia. Just as there's a UN Security Council meeting, boom, there's something like there's a big mortar attack. and lots of people are killed.
Don't you miss Samantha Power? She used to get so
I miss her so much. And so we have another super chat from a good friend, Spectre in the Air. Thank you so much. You've been very, very kind to us. It's a good show, guys. Nice chatting with you. Stay safe. Well, we'll try it. And congratulations on doing so much intense physical exercise. We kind of live vicariously through you. So kind of feel strong just reading about all these kilometers that you swim and you run and think, yeah,
I feel just the opposite. I feel exhausted when I hear All right, if there isn't any more questions, I think we can as Biden administration likes to say, we'll put a lid on it.
But yeah, exactly. All right, well, Peter, it was very nice talking to you. Thank you so much. Gagglers, thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the interesting questions and all the interesting comments. We couldn't get to all of your comments because there's so many, but it certainly helped to make this a lively show. And there is
Robbie.
Yep, he's putting in his two bits worth. We're very grateful for all
right,
the super chats.
Do our usual wrap up. This is where the Gaggle were on locals. As you just saw, we did our super chat at 12 noon Eastern time. We just completed it. We made it through another one. We live week by week on this. Please go to the store, and George does it. The all important, very exciting, internationally anticipated.
Exactly, widely anticipated. Exactly, live stream Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me. Always a lot of fun. But before you toggle off and tip the bartender, please tip us. We're very grateful for all of your support and all your help and your friendship. And
be a buddy tipster.
Be a buddy tipster. The more you can donate, the better the product will be. And remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.